She has been working on fighting a lot of the same things in many respects that Moms for Liberty and other organizations have been in our education system as it relates to kids, because, I mean, we are now presently living in the culture that has been created by those educational institutions in many ways. The way our kids and who used to be kids, but now the 20-somethings and in many cases 30-something-year-olds that are running for office, that are activists, etc. And that worldview is not in alignment with traditional American values. And we got here because we are different as a nation, because we're not Europe, because we're not other places. And we want to maintain that, and all that starts in the classroom. All right, guys, if you would, give a warm welcome to Laurie Cardoza-Moore.
Thank you, Brandon. Jason, thank you so much. Thank all of you for being here this morning. I am so encouraged and inspired to see a full room of active people who want to engage our culture and take back our nation. And as you saw in the video, we launched a campaign called Taking Back America's Children. And I think we're going to have, Brandon, do we have time to do Q&A afterwards? Because I'm going to speak for about 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes?
Yes.
And then
Dennis comes on at 1:45.
Okay, so we're going to make sure that we stay within that time frame. Over a decade ago, I had a member of our organization. As you can see, our mission is to educate Christians to stand with Israel and Jewish people against the rise of global anti-Semitism. We accomplished that mission by producing award-winning documentary films and television programs that are broadcast across the globe to a Christian audience, to wake Christians up, because if they come after the Jews, ladies and gentlemen, I've been saying this for almost 20 years, if they come after the Jews, they're going to come after the church next. Because remember, we are grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel. Paul talked about this. Our relationship with our Jewish brethren is tied to the scriptures. And when we started to see this 20 years ago, right after 9/11, we realized there's a huge problem. And there's an even greater problem within the church, because the church is not, pastors have not been preaching and teaching this to those who are sitting in the pulpit or in the pews. But a decade ago, I had a mom who's a member of our organization who contacted me, and she said, "You'll never believe what we're teaching our children in Williamson County schools." And so I said, "Bring me the materials." Remember, this is over a decade ago, Julie West. I don't know if any of you remember Julie, but she and I were two of the original leaders of exposing what's happening that has now gone global. But she calls me and tells me this. I said, "Bring me the materials, let's look at it." Well, in the content, as she's telling me, explaining to me about what happened, her son came home from school. Now, let me just, share with you this family. This is a family who homeschooled their children. I was homeschooling my kids at the same time. Our kids were in the same Bible study together. And she said to me that my son, his first day in public schools, she had homeschooled him through middle, like I was doing with my kids, and she put him in a public school, Franklin High School. He came home, this is 3 months after classes started, he comes home and says to his mom, "Mom, who has legitimate rights to the land of Israel?" Or she said to him, she knows he's a student of the Bible. She says, "Well, what does the Bible say?" And he said, "No, Mom, I know what the Bible says." He said, "But tell me the truth. Who has legitimate rights to the land of Israel?" We sit and we look at our kids, and we look at these young people on the TV screens, and we look at the chaos that is erupting in our communities, and we wonder, how could this happen so quickly to our kids, right? Do you share that same thought? What happened to our nation? Well, a decade ago, we were sounding the alarm. We were clanging the bells and saying, "People, wake up, look at what they're teaching our kids." It wasn't just the anti-Semitic part. It was the anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, the values that this country was founded upon. And we were saying back then, wake up. Because if we don't address this now, we're gonna lose our country because our children are turning on us. And so when he came home and he questioned his faith, 3 months, it only took 3 months. And this was a kid that was homeschooled. He was grounded. That's why we homeschool. That's why a lot of parents are pulling their kids out of the public school system now. Why? Because they know that their children are going to be indoctrinated if they don't. Well, as soon as she put her kid into the public school system, 3 months later, he's already questioning his faith. And that is what's happening to our children. We launched this initiative to take back America's children because we have got to confront this battle. We have got to take it. The goal is to take on the school boards because they're the ones on the local level who are deciding what they think our children should know. So as we exposed this, we launched a campaign in Williamson County. Some of you may remember that battle because we mobilized the community. We knew over a decade ago that the parents of Williamson County were pretty much evangelical Christians. And if they knew what was being taught to their children, they would mobilize and they'd be angry. Well, you know what? We were right. There was a school board meeting that was coming up that was going to vote on whether to remove this textbook because we petitioned the school board. We said this book does not reflect our community's values. It's against our faith and it's against history. It's not accurate. Well, the school board had their meeting and they had their night. They were going to vote on it. We had to get parents and citizens to show up. Well, guess what? We had standing room only. We saw what we could do, how we could mobilize Williamson County to take back local control. And parent after parent got up and said, get rid of this textbook. These values do not reflect ours. Because remember, it wasn't just the anti-Semitic part, it's the anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian content. And that night, that school board decided to vote to keep it. When I got up to speak that night, I said to the board, if you've heard from the people, if you don't remove this textbook from our children's classrooms, we're going to remove every one of you from office. That was in April. That was in April. That night, the next day actually, we went to work. We started looking for people like you and me who would be willing to run. We started looking for people to volunteer on campaigns. There were 6 even number school board members that were up for re-election that year. And guess what? Come August, we only had 4 months, ladies and gentlemen. We can do it. Come August, election day, those 6 school board members that were up for re-election, we brought every one of them down. Stop there, because the problem was pervasive across the state. And we were speaking in counties and school districts and little meetings, small business meetings about what was happening, because as words started getting out about Hal Rounds is one of our original fighters. Hal, would you please just raise your hand? Yep. Straight and narrow when it came to the Constitution, what was violating the Constitution. But what happened that night sent reverberations across the state of Tennessee. We had mobilized, by this time, we had mobilized people, parents, and citizens in 50 counties across the state to get engaged. They were going to their school board meetings with their kid textbooks, because the same textbooks we were using in Williamson County were being used in these counties across the state. We were able to get those communities. They started challenging their school board members. It was snowball effect. And then, all of a sudden, we get the attention of the state legislature. And we're getting calls asking us to come and testify. Bring us evidence. They want Pearson Publishers. Pearson Publishers is one of the big culprits for all of this. And not textbooks are called Pearson anymore, because they changed the name to Savas. They keep changing the name to make everybody think that, oh, it's new curriculum. No, it's not. It's the same garbage being regurgitated. Now, it's even worse, because now we've got the pornographic content being used. But we testified, and we were able, as a result of those testimonies, we were able to change the state law. The state legislature, number one, abolished the textbook commission, because this textbook commission, or the textbook commission that was currently in play, they had approved this book. So the legislature voted to completely abolish the textbook commission and start a whole new commission, appointing new people and expanding for more transparency, including parents. And fortunately, today, I get to serve on that tech commission that we were involved in helping to implement. I'm one of maybe 3 voices that agree that have the same value systems as you and I have and share. We were able to change the law in Tennessee that require now the textbooks, history textbooks, have to be accurate. They have to be unbiased. They have to reflect the values of our community. That all came because one mom decided to stand up and do something. And now we are seeing the next generation of that with Robin and her team and others, Gary, who are rising up, who are taking a stand. We can take back local control, ladies and gentlemen, of our children's future and the future of this republic, because everything is in play. Everything hangs in the balance. If we don't do our part, we can't come to great conferences like this and then go home and say, oh, it's horrible, it's happening. Get on and talk to our friends and our family and talk about what we learned. You cannot just leave here. If you are not signed up to get involved with one of the organizations that's on the front line of this battle, maybe several of the organizations, the only way we take back control of our government is here, we the people. We just came off of an election cycle, and unfortunately, things didn't turn out quite as well as what we hoped. But you know what? That doesn't mean we're stopping. We still have a lot of work to do, ladies and gentlemen. I want to just share with you and then open up, because some of you were supposed to attend our summit that was actually supposed to be this weekend, but it worked out because I'm here. But we are getting silenced. And I've talked to several other leaders of organizations, and they're experiencing the same thing. We are being shadow banned. We are being canceled. We are being silenced. Our ability to get our message out to you, to inform you about what's going on and events that you should be attending, because we had top tier leadership coming in, is being squandered by these elitists who are silencing our voices. And we are going to have to be smarter and be ahead of the game to try to communicate with each of you to get our message out. One of the things that our goal is with the summit, and that's why we're bringing in these speakers, we are going to host another day, the date and time, and the location details are going to be coming. If you're not on a mailing list, I want to encourage you, you should have a brochure. Please go to pjtn.org. Follow us on social media so that we can communicate with you. It doesn't guarantee, but we also need to get your mailing address, because what we're going to have to start doing to bypass these people that are trying to silence us is we're going to have to start sending stuff out snail mail again, way ahead of time, to put it on the calendar, or tell you all to go to our different websites to register, because we're not going to be guaranteed the message, because they are going to continue to silence us, ladies and gentlemen. And if we can't communicate, then we can't actually engage and take a stand. The goal with this Taking Back America's Children Summit is to unmask the revisionist history that is gone, to reinstate curriculum that contains an accurate perspective of history, to combat the Marxist ideology that our children are being introduced to, and to block the anti-Semitism and Holocaust revision that's going on. For any of you history buffs in the Holocaust revisionism is a very serious problem. Now they're trying to read the history of the Holocaust. They're trying to make it more universal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Holocaust was only about one thing. It was Hitler's final solution to the Jewish question. That's all it was about. What are they doing now? They're trying to incorporate the message of racism to minimize what happened to 6 million Jews who died just because they were Jewish. I want to share with you, as we wrap it up here, because I want to open up for Q&A. I want to share with you that Ronald, many of us in this room are old enough to remember Ronald Reagan, my hero. I want to share Reagan's rendezvous destiny speech, because let me just tell you something. President Reagan, the night that he made this speech, was prophesying to our country. Whether he realized it or not, or saw it as such, somebody who wrote his script had the foresight to say this message. And it's deeply relevant today. This is what he said almost years ago, ladies and gentlemen. He said, quote, "You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness." As a military leader, Moses sent 12 spies into Canaan. Now, this is my comments I just want to share with you. That was Ronald Reagan said. Are we going to choose to send our children into 1,000 years of darkness? That's what Reagan was trying to warn us about back then. As a leader, he sent 12 spies into Canaan to conduct a recon mission. The spies were to gather intel. Unfortunately, 10 of the spies lacked the courage to rise to the challenge. Leadership matters, ladies and gentlemen. As a result of the leadership of those 10 leaders, the whole had to pay the consequences of the lack of leadership by those individuals. Ultimately, only Joshua and Caleb were able to enter the promised land because they had the belief that God would give them the victory to take the territory. As we go into November to take back our nation, we too will bear the consequences of our choices. Can we defeat Biden and the Marxist takeover of our nation? Or will our children and generations after us have to pay the price for our failure to appoint leaders with faith and courage too? This is why we launched this Taking Back America's Children, because we, the people, have a duty, ladies and gentlemen. We have a responsibility. This has not fallen to any other generation. We have a rendezvous destiny as God would have it. And He has appointed us, each one of us, to be here at this hour for such a time as this. Do not take lightly the fact that you're sitting in your... this building, this room should be packed. It should be flowing. There should be people standing out in the hallway, in the lobby, wanting to get in here to hear this message. But there are not. It's you. It's me. It's us. God has called us to this. And if God has called us to this thing, this is our mission. For such as this, will we rise to the challenge? Will we obey His leading? Because if we do not, we are setting our children up for 1,000 years of this. That is the hard reality, because now we have our legislation working in tandem with these leftist Marxist ideologues that do not share the values that you and I share. But I want to encourage you, as you contemplate what your role is going to be, you will do. I want to remind you that God has chosen for us, this generation, to do the work of His kingdom. And I can't do it as the video closed. I cannot do this. Gary can't do it. Robin can't do it. All the others here can't do it without each of us doing our part. I again want to close where I opened by telling you, I am so grateful to everyone, because this battle is not easy. Gary will tell you, Robin will tell you it is not an easy battle, but we are willing to fight it. But we can't do it without each of you. If you're not signed up on our mailing list, I'm asking you to join in this fight. Join us. Show our government officials that they cannot squander the votes that we gave, because we will be held accountable. Those of you who heard me speak about the ability of those who lead, the people that we appoint over us, they must be people who fear God. They have to love truth, and they have to take money. Those are the 4 qualifications. And no, the candidate can't have 3 or 2 or 1 of those qualifications. Do you know candidates who help pull to those guys? I know Senator Bowling does. I can point to them. And there's some others. Senator Cody, others at the legislature. But it happens based on what you and I do today. And as the history books are written 100 years from now, when they write about our generation, that we whipped out, we didn't decide, we chose, it's too big. Well, that's what the 10 spies said when they entered the land. Oh, the giants are too big. We can't take them. Yes, there's, plenty of food, and the land is great. It's everything that God said it was going to be. But we can't take them. Gentlemen, yes, we can. Okay, 1:30. I have 15 minutes. I want to just open up the floor for any questions, comments. Anybody has? Yes, sir.
We lost 4 before in the school board of Montgomery County. All Republicans lost. I mean, in Wilson County, they had a pretty good election. I was listening to this Saturday, to their monthly meeting, bi-monthly meeting, and they elected people they never got into office. And I think what they said they did was the entire Republican organization, everybody themselves with it, went out and these people and made sure that they won their elections. As far as the snail mail comment you had, that snail mail is very, very good, because I've been canceled before. I sent 50 to 60 political emails under the name Dr. Carpenter, head running the largest international party in America with 2 other guys, one from Franklin, one 2 guys from Down. And well, one morning, and I sent an email every single morning, 50,700 members, and that had been submitted, emails submitted. I lost the phone, and we woke up and had no membership. No archive data ever existed. And that was in the end days of Obama. Well, I think we're still in the end days of Obama. And if you can't get mad about this, get up what the heck are you doing?
That's what it is. Yes, no, you're getting canceled. How many people have seen that happen? How many have been shut down? We've been shut down from video, from our social media. Now even Google is pushing the bulk emails that are going out into spam. And we're just finding out. I mean, we know that this has been going on. We've seen signs of it. Yes, sir.
Yes, I just want to talk about, and thank you for what you're doing, but just talk a little bit about the impact of the youth. I know in my district, I'm the only representative that has two unions. I have an AFT, American Federation of Teachers, and I have an EA, Tennessee Education Association. Both of them fight me every time I run, which I'm proud to do that. A little bit about the influence they're having in our classrooms and in our teaching.
About the union and the National School Board Association and Attorney General Garb. What am I missing? Yeah, we are terrorists. We want to see the influence that happens when we turn our schools over to these national organizations. They go to our president and put a bug in the president's ear and say, we want these parents and citizens that are showing up for meetings, creating all this trouble for us to be listed domestic terrorists. This is outrageous, ladies and gentlemen. Every freaking one of them needs to be arrested and thrown in jail. I get a little upset about things like this, but you know what? They forget this is a government and a nation. We, the people, they serve at our pleasure, and they need to be reminded of it. Next question, please.
Thank you, Laurie. I have a question for you regarding the Wood School Board. So when you held that 10 years ago, did they allow all parents? Because I noticed a pattern where it seems to be like censorship, because they're really only allowing a certain number of parents to speak, and they limit the time, and they say we have no money. So we had a really large meeting last year, and many parents arrived, and subsequently after that meeting, I called all the parents domestic terrorists and whatever. But they limited the public comments to only 30, and only 2 minutes. And some of these other committees too on a government level do this on a regular basis, and that made me think they had some sort of sheriff deputy actually escort a citizen out of the room. So can you comment on that? Because was it that way 10 years ago?
They didn't never. They just never. You could see this as we were coming into the meeting. Their eyes are huge. Mike Looney at one point, because he was superintendent, he said, I have never gotten emails from people about a textbook in another country. Wow. And yes, people were way in across the world, and they were emailing him. When we had that meeting, there were parents lined up. They were able to sign up, and every parent, they relegated it, I think, to 3 minutes. Each parent had 3 minutes to speak, but they never turned us away. But it was after that, future meetings, they slowly started to limit the number of people. We're only going to let this number of people, so if you want to speak, you better get there early and sign up. So we would show up early. We would accommodate, but then they started to limit the number because they didn't want to hear from we the people. They didn't want to be held accountable. And let me tell you, the press was there. It was big news. In fact, the press, believe it or not, the Tennessean was doing great stories about us because we were making a huge issue. It never happened before. They didn't know what to do with us. But since then, yes, they're squandering our rights and our freedoms to be able to communicate. But we should not allow that. Larry Crane, in fact, at our summit, Larry Crane is going to be one of the leaders who's going to come and speak. And he's going to talk about what our legal rights are. There's another thing that you brought up too. Our sheriff. Do you all know, I know all of you probably know this, but many Americans do not know this, that the sheriff's responsibility is to protect our constitutional rights in our community. Not like the police department who, conducts law and order. and the sheriff does too. But the sheriff's responsibility is to make sure that our freedoms are not infringed. And when we go into school board meetings, we need to make sure we've got a sheriff deputy that is there to make sure that we are not silenced or we are not carried out in handcuffs out of the school board meeting. But do you know your sheriff? You know, we've spoken with Dusty Rhodes, we've honored Dusty, he knows how we feel. We've got Sheriff Mack who's going to be coming into the summit. How many of you know America's Sheriff? If you don't know America's Sheriff, I'm encouraging you. Google him. America's Sheriff Richard Mack. He is the sheriff that is traveling across this country to remind our sheriff deputies what their responsibility is. You need to get to know him. You need to get on his mailing list because he is a major mover and a shaker. And in fact, we know that unfortunately, our sheriff of Livingston County was not able to participate in the summit. He may be able to participate now since we're postponing it. But we need to hear from our sheriff to make sure that he's going to uphold our constitutional rights. And also, the book, the Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. How many of you are familiar? Oh, go to Amazon, order that book. Understand what your rights are as citizens of this country. The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. It is critically important that you study that book and you share it with your family and friends. Next question, because I know we're getting to, we've got 6 minutes. Yes, sir.
I could yell. Real quick. The National Association of Independent Schools, like throughout the country, most people don't think that this is a private school problem. They don't think it's a school problem,
Right.
Someone else's problem.
Great question.
So, A, do you know them, and if you have any silver bullets to get everyone? Because the interesting anecdote is in Williamson County, they are a school there. Halbrecht Hall was a member of that organization, and they were going to, it's all girls private school. They're going to allow transgender boys into the school. I have a feeling a bunch of phone calls came in and said, we can do that, the money's gone, and they changed their mind about a week ago, and now it's off. There's a large group, obviously, in that school. My daughter happens to be going to one of them too, and what I'm thinking, so I talked to administrators at that school, and they said, yeah, we haven't paid the dues for that, and we're thinking about leaving them. We've got a movement to just get everyone to cancel them, defund them, and then that's the end of that.
So I want to make, I don't know the organization specifically, I haven't done the research for that. Yes, what is it?
NAIS, National Association of Independent Schools.
Okay.
I wrote about it in the tennis circuit.
Okay, let me tell you about the private schools, because people ask me all the time, well, what do we do with our kids? Where are we going to put them? I tell them, homeschool them. I was just counseling a mom who's got 5 kids and she just adopted. She's in Iowa, and she says, I want to homeschool my kids. This stuff is coming into our schools. So I'm advising her. She's in her 60s, and her children, her natural born children are all raised, and these are children that she adopted. And she's taking them out of the system to homeschool them. But the private schools, people think, oh, if I put my kid in a private school or a private Christian school. I was trying back in 1993, 94, when I was lobbying for the pro-life cause. One of the other issues that I worked with Bobby Petray, we all know Bobby, Eagle Forum, we would help all the lobbyists, because we only had a handful of conservative lobbyists back then. We would help. So I learned a lot about education. Well, Christ Pres, you all know Christ Pres Academy. We had our kids at Christ Pres, one going into kindergarten, the other one going into 5th grade. And I found out that they were bringing in Bridges. How many of you are familiar with Bridges curriculum? Okay, Bridges is the precursor to this garbage we have right now, Common Core. And so I went to the pastor. I went to the leadership, the headmaster, Richard Anderson. I gave them 2 inches thick of documentation to show them if you implement this in your private Christian school, you are going to undermine the future of these children. The very mission statement you say that you have, you'll never be able to accomplish it. And you know what? I gave them 2 months over the summer to think about it, to get rid of it. They chose not to. We pulled our kids out of that private Christian school and homeschooled them because of it. The problem is not just the public school, it's the private schools and the private Christian schools, because they want cheaper textbooks. So what do? And the reason, let me just tell you why, the reason why they didn't pull the curriculum, because their biggest donor happened to be a deacon in the church. Anyhow, I think that I've got 2 minutes. Any quick questions? Ladies and gentlemen,
Go to quick person.
we got a lot of work to do. We can take back our community. We're going to take back our county. We're going to take back the state. We're taking back this nation. But it requires each of us. Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am.
Hi, Laurie. Thank you so much for coming and speaking. And I didn't want to infringe on your time, but I did want to tell you there is an option to snail mail. That you can still have an online presence. See my t-shirt, Public Square, is a new online platform that was created by and for patriots and freedom-loving Americans. The entire idea behind it is so that we can network.
Perfect.
So if you haven't heard of it, please, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, thank you.
There is an option.
So, ladies and gentlemen, to wind this up, I'm going to be here. Good. Is there another? Oh, okay. He's getting his exercise.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Eric Moore, and I actually am from Blount County, Tennessee, and I actually just got elected to the school board out there. So I want to know what advice you should give me as a school board member, because I know where I stand, I know what my values are. There are 6 other people on that board, and the board, we just switched over, and so 2 incumbents are now gone, and there's 2 more people. But it worries me that they've never attended a school board meeting or anything like that. So I really don't know where they stand. And so I'm just trying to figure out how I navigate it, because like I said, I'm one person. So what do I do with the other 6 people that are on the school board?
You are only one voice, but you can influence those others. And I want to encourage you to get the book, Robert's Rules of Order, and study that book. But I also want you to go to the policy page of your county school district and study the policies. And look and see what the district has been doing, because typically on a national scale, we see this movement happening on the school boards because it's a national effort to manipulate these school boards. But you are the voice of reason in the midst of all of that. Those are the 2 things I would highly recommend you do, because if you know the game, you know the rules of the game, you can beat them at their own game. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, God bless you all. Thank you so much. Brandon, let's give Brandon a hand.